Hello mathematicians, this is Mrs. Petrova with part 3 of lesson 6.1.4 about dividing. Just a quick review. In part 1 of the dividing, we learned that instead of dividing, we were able to get the same answer by multiplying when we switched the numerator with the denominator. That was part 1 towards the end, observation. Then earlier in part 2, or the previous problem, we also used that same technique. So we had the problem 2/3 divided by 1/2, and then we decided to go, well, if we know that this method works, it's easier to multiply than divide. So without the picture, I'm going to change the order of the 1/2 is going to be 2/1, and then I would multiply the way we learn in class. So 2 times 2 is 4, previously with the bottom times multiplies with the bottom. So that's how we got the 4/3 for problem 47. So this video will continue with dividing, and it's going to be the last 2 core problems from this lesson. If you do have this handout, follow along. If you do not, go ahead and log into your ebook and find those 2 problems. As usual, make sure you have your notebook or note paper ready. So pause the video before you continue. Problem 6-48, team division. For each of the division problems below, work with your team to write a question in words that could be answered using expression. Draw a diagram that represents the problem and your question. Find the quotient and explain what it means. Be ready to explain your ideas to the class. At this time, there's a lot of information, so let's go back. And first of all, I do see the division problems. And if you're writing on your own note paper, make sure you're writing the problem number and a little bit of what the directions are before you answer them. So that was just a little reminder. So they want us to write a question in words. So far in part 1 and part 2, we could have used area or portion in terms of food or dividing of some sort. So we could do that kind of idea. So it's totally up to us. They do want us to draw a diagram. And so we could be either a number line or squares or actually circles, whichever we decide to do. And then when they say find the quotient, quotient means the answer to the division. Whatever we find here is called the quotient. So it's another way of saying find the answer to division problem. And then lastly, they said be ready to explain your ideas to class. Since this is a video, I would explain, perhaps I will do example A completely, and you guys can try B on your own. So I started with writing a question. I simply saw the division problem. I know I'm dividing by 1/2. So I wrote how many 1/2s go into 3/4. But I also can think of other ideas such as how many $half go into 75 cents? Or basically what I could do is, we actually ate pizza today. So let's see, I did not start with a whole pizza. I only had 3/4 of a pizza and I need to divide it into half. So how would we do that? So how many halves into 3/4? So that's another way of writing that. So be creative when you guys do example B. Notice the numbers are reversed. So when you're doing example B on your own, you have to say how many 3/4 go into 1/2. So this is super important. So at this time, I'd like to think of what diagram should I create. I could use a number line or I could use a circle. Since I brought the problem about the pizza and I know how to do quarters and 3/4 and a half into a circle, I actually am going to go with a actual circle. But again, you could use a number line, of course. And we've done that in the other parts. So I'm starting with a whole circle. However, 3/4 is what I need to have. So I'm going to divide in 3/4. And let's shade 3/4 is what we have. there's the 3/4, and I will color code. And now how many 1/2s go into 3/4? Well, I only see, so if I'm using a red for a half, I only see half over here. So 1/2. And if I want to record it as like 1 whole and a half. So visually I'm thinking there's 1 whole and then 1 out of 2, so that's a half. So that's the answer visually. Now let's use our strategy to see if that's going to be true if we do our multiplication strategy and the one we reviewed earlier. So writing 3/4 to start with, divided by 1/2. I'm going to stay with the 3/4, the pizza that I have, but this time I'm going to multiply, and I'm looking for those 2 parts. So I'm going to change the order of the numerator and denominator. You might think of flipping after we change the division into multiplication, but visually I can see that I'm counting in groups of 2. And then right now I have 6 on top. 3 times 2 is 6. And what number on the bottom do I have? So 4 times 1 is 4. So right now, if I reduce it, am I going to get the same as this? So 6/4 is 1 whole, yes. 4 goes into 6 one time, with a remainder of 2/4, which is 1/2. So definitely I could have also reduced that into 3/2, but it is giving me 1 whole and 1/2, which I got the answer visually. Now, remember, you want to try to do B on your own. If it's still confusing, right now you are to try on your own. I might give you some suggestion in a moment, but really you have to reverse the thinking. You have only 1/2 a pizza and you're dividing it into 3/4. So definitely our answer should be, well, 3/4 doesn't even go into 1/2. So think about that on your own first. Okay, so I hope you tried your best to do it on your own, and for the answer should be totally inverse. It should have a 4 on top and 6 on the bottom for your example B, or of course it would be 2 out of 3. So definitely inverse of the previous since they're switched around. You may have noticed that one answer or quotient in problem 48 is greater than 1 and that one answer is less than 1, even though all of the numbers in the problem are less than 1. Work with your team to figure out why this makes sense. Be ready to explain your thinking. So right now they're telling us to think back to our problems. You did one with me, problem A, and you had to do one on your own, example B, and I just revealed the answer a little bit. So they're saying the answer to division, which is called the quotient, one of it was larger than 1, yes, we got 1 and 1/2, and the other one was smaller than 1, 0.666 repeating, or the 2/3 that we're talking about, or 4/6 that is less than 1 whole. So be ready to explain your thinking. So why does this make sense? Now example B, write and solve 2 new fraction division problems. So you're going to write it, you're going to solve it. Now what kind of problems? You decide. So you make up your own fraction and switch the order if you have to, but try 2 new things to where you're switching the order and see. It says write one that has an answer that is less than 1 and one that has the answer greater than 1. Be ready to share your problem with the class. I strongly suggest you to work with something that you're familiar with. For example, like 2/5 or 1/4. So a fraction, this is just my example, but you could try to make your own, of course. So if I want to use, let's see, 3/4 divided by 1/5, and then I want to switch and see which one, how would they be different. They're saying that one answer should be bigger than 1 and the other one should be smaller than 1. Now, don't forget we learned how to check our work using Desmos Scientific Calculator. So I want you to enter them as you see them. Now, division symbol, it might give you a fraction over fraction, so don't be scared when you see it, but we learned that fraction bar are also divisions. But one of them will give you a answer, or should it give you answer bigger than 1, and one should give you less. Calculator. So this concludes basically part 3. Use the strategy we learned today, especially we started by saying instead of division we can replace it using multiplication, but we have to switch the order. We've been working really hard, so try these on your own. Thank you for watching.